and you're selling it for $5 for a gallon of milk. If the day before, the one bank that's in your community doubles the money supply and gives it to a few individuals, loans it out to a few individuals, well, you have no idea what's coming. You're still going to sell it for $5, and when one of these individuals comes into the store, they're going to get to buy it for $5. But pretty quickly, all that new money is going to start being spent, and that spending is going to drive the economy, and that's something that we're taught in economics, is how our current system works, where we have a bank in the center who, when they print money for all of Canada, when they print more of it, it's supposed to stimulate things. And all this new money, it's going to be easy to borrow, start up businesses, people are going to spend more. And then there's the negative side effect, which would be when that central bank brings in the receipts. Because if they can issue the receipts, they can call them back in. And those receipts go out there through loans. So when the money's loaned out, the money supply increases. But when those loans come due and those receipts come back to the bank, the money supply contracts. So that the expansion of the money supply is the boom in the business cycle, and the contraction is the opposite, where you have a dampening of business, where things that cost $5, now there's less money. There's less money out there, so people can't afford the $5 thing. So as the money supply contracts, you have the recession. So you have a bank, a central bank, that can control this. And they can, as James Garfield, this guy, 20th President of the United States, a few powerful men at the top, those that are controlling the central bank, are the ones behind inflation and depression. Go to the next one. This one is a heavy one. The division of the United States into federations of equal force was decided long before the Civil War by the high financial powers of Europe. These bankers were afraid that the United States, if they remained as one bloc and as one nation, would attain economic and financial independence, which would upset their financial domination over the world. Otto von Bismarck, the first Chancellor of Germany. If I took this away, you may think that, this is some crazy guy in the corner saying this sort of thing. But this is no crazy guy in the corner. This is a guy who united the broken states of Prussia and parts of Austria. I'm not exactly sure. But he was a very bright, very intelligent, shrewd politician. And if he's pointing to high financial powers of Europe and accusing them of using war, deliberately causing war for their own ends, it really makes me take a step back and look at this whole financial situation and individuals like Rockefeller, J.P. Morgan, and Rothschild that are the ones sort of behind these systems, and how much tremendous power that is captured when things like a central bank are created. Go for it. Okay, well, let's move up in history. That's I was talking before about the goldsmiths. That's the 16th century. More happened since then. In Canada, for example, you had the Bank of Montreal in 1817, which was created. That wasn't a central bank, but it was basically institutionalizing what the goldsmiths did. The first Bank of Canada, the Bank of Montreal, functioned exactly as the goldsmiths did. They took in gold and they put out more paper than there was gold backing it. We almost got a central bank later from this gentleman, Lord Sydenham. And I want to bring that up because these names, I think, are important, because these are the ones that are pushing for this central banking system. We had a no standard. In other words, you could use any kind of money that you wanted. up until 1853. Before 1853, I guess the best way to say it is just that money wasn't put into law by the government of Canada. It wasn't dealt with in Canada. Whatever the people did with their money was their own business. In 1853, the government said, our money is going to be the dollar, and it's going to be such and such amount of gold, 232 grains of gold. So that was when we had the beginning of our unified Canadian currency, the Canadian currency, but it was gold. It was always understood that our money would be gold, and any paper that's out there is still just representing that gold. Even though there is this fractional reserve process going on, still, the gold is still recognized as the unit of account. The paper just represents it. In 1914, had something passed in Canada called the Finance Act, where that Canadian currency, which was tied to gold, that link was broken. And it was because it was only allowed as a condition because of World War I. The financial elite in Canada that were loaning the government more and more and more money for the war were starting to fail, because even though through the fractional reserve process more and more receipts were going out than gold backing it, eventually, if enough people realize the scam and they start going back and get their gold out, well, at a certain point, that gold is only going to supply the first few receipts, and then those next receipts that come, there's going to be no gold left. And under the laws then, that would mean bankruptcy. So in World War I, so much lending was taking place, and the amount of receipts to gold was growing and growing and growing. The banks convinced the government to allow the banks not to redeem their receipts for actual gold. And that's when Canada moved off the gold standard. The next and last thing I want to talk about the history was the creation of the Bank of Canada, which is our central bank. Actually, no, I do want to say one more thing. Before the creation of the central bank, can you go to the next one? The Great Depression. When I was talking before about a bank being able to expand the money supply and contract the money supply, creating an expansion and then the recession. This is a Nobel Prize winning economist who's commenting on this. And I know in school I was taught that something like there was all this lending that happened in the 20s, and then they couldn't pay it back. So then the banks couldn't pay the loans, and then the stock market crashed. And it's all these speculation that caused the stock market to crash, over speculation. I want to put forward the idea of Milton Friedman that the Great Depression, the worst depression in our country's history, was directly caused by, well, it says here, contracting the amount of currency. Who's contracting the amount of currency? It's the central bank, who's contracting the amount of currency. In Canada, at that time, it wasn't called the central bank. It was just the government. They were acting as if they were a central bank. In 1935, we created a separate thing. There was the government, and then there was the central bank. It's not so much of a distinction, but what is a distinction is the final, or perhaps not the final, but the worst assault on our money was when, you can go to the next one, when the, okay, don't go to the next one, was when we had the creation of our central bank, and something came in Canada called the Currency Act, which forbid people to use gold or silver or other things in transactions. So we went the complete opposite, where it was our gold and silver